Hello everyone, this is Venom, and today I want to go over some of the new features that we're getting in Monster Hunter Wilds, and how they're going to change the game up from Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter World. Now, every new game that comes out, especially every generation, they tend to add on some new effects, some new abilities. You get more moves with your weapons, you typically get some additional features, and they change up the game in a few different ways. For example, when Monster Hunter World came out, it kind of shook up the game because you no longer had to do things like, leave your quest to swap weapons. You could go back to camp and restock items. You could actually you get a little tail rider now you can ride around on. So these are things you never had in the older generations. Now, when World came out, like I said, it shook up a lot of that old stuff that a lot of the older vets, some were happy with it, some were not so happy with it. I personally, like I said, I played since Monster Hunter Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, so I loved it. I loved not having to farm whetstones anymore. You just get one infinite whetstone. I love not having to grind as much for items, or I should say that the grind for those items is easier. Getting your honey, getting your potions, that kind of thing. Before it would take hours to get stuff like that before a big hunt. Now, it doesn't take that long. It could take a bit, but it doesn't take as long as before. Other things, like I mentioned before, you don't have to go back to the actual town to swap weapons, for example. You can just go to your camp and you can swap weapons right there. Now, I think you've always been able to heal at camp, but it takes a while to do so. You'd have to lay down in your bed and heal from there. It was not a quick process at all, but you were never able to swap out your loadouts. You couldn't restore your items. That was a huge thing. If you didn't have enough items with you, enough healing potions, then either you got to go out and gather some more, or you just had to deal with what you had. Even some abilities, like being able to heal with your weapons and armor, was something that, for the most part, I don't think were in the older games. There may have been some armor skills later on in some of the generations I may have missed, but I don't think it's ever been as easy as it was in World and Rise. So those are some things that were really, really cool. From World to Rise, we got some additional new things. Now, some features were just for that game, and some kind of carryover. Now, for example, new weapon abilities and new combos for your weapons, those typically carry over. New weapons typically carry over, with few exceptions. I think there are some old weapons that never got brought out to the later series, like the Tomphras, I think. Have not really got to see those in the mainline series, so I really hope they bring those back. But, for example, in Monster Hunter Rise, wire bugs. As cool as wire bugs are, it's not really a feature that I think we're going to see in Wilds. In fact, I don't think we've seen that at all. Something else that we're not going to see is you being able to, and this is hopefully, I don't think I've heard anybody talk about this, but getting your power-ups, such as your extra vitality and your attack and your stamina, from some of the endemic life out in the world. Now, I thought about it, and I think that's one of the things I really didn't like about Rise, is that in World and every other game, I can do all my preparation before the hunt and then go out and go right to the monster. But in Rise, certain things you had to get from endemic life. For example, vitality. You couldn't get your vitality up to past a certain point. You would have to find certain insects out in the world and run through them and get a buff and slowly get incremental buffs. I didn't like that at all. Same thing with certain stamina and attack buffs. You could get those buffs out and about, but you could not really start with them, and I did not really like that at all. In Monster Hunter World, for example, when I put on my full Fatalis set, I've got full health and stamina. I don't have to worry about getting that stuff when I get out to the field. So I think that's one thing about Rise that really rubbed me the wrong way. Obviously, there's some technical issues with Rise right now as far as network issues, because right now, the challenge I'm doing for the channel, if you haven't seen, I'm doing a Road to Wilds challenge where I'm trying to master Lance, because that's what you guys voted on, and I was going to do it on Monster Hunter Rise, but I can't get any multiplayer sessions to start. I've searched for some. I was going to try to fight Velkhana, nobody's fighting it. I tried to search for some other fights. I mean, there's literally nobody, so I don't know what's going on with that, but Monster Hunter World is jumping right now. I mean, everything I'm looking for, every SOS I put out. I mean, there's plenty of monsters that are still being fought, plenty of people. I mean, there's still 2 or 3 pages of groups whenever I search for a session, so it's going very well. But all that is to say that I'm looking forward to a lot of the changes coming in Wilds, and I want to go over some of them. These are going to be changes that are going to really, really change the way that the franchise goes. Is going to really change the way that you play the game. It's going to change up the meta. It's going to change up a lot of things, especially the first one I'm going to start off with, and that is you get to use 2 weapons now. That's right. It's actually 2 things in a row. We're going to be getting a creature we can ride on called a Sacred. It's not quite like a Palamute from what I understand. It's more like a Tail Rider Palamute combination, and it's going to carry a second weapon for us. Now, it sparked a lot of not concerned, but it has raised some questions about how things like decorations are going to work and how your setups are going to work. And apparently Capcom has set it up to where all your attack decorations are going to be tied to your weapons, all your attack skills, and your defense skills are going to be attached to your armor. So when you swap out weapons, it should not really affect your loadout at all. It should basically swap the attack. Like, for example, if I got my charge blade, for example, my lance does not take a magazine gem. So if I got a magazine gem in my charge blade, I don't got to worry about having a useless skill on my lance when I swap it out. So stuff like that. The Sacred again was another one. Now we've seen some creatures we can ride on in the last two titles. Monster Hunter World, of course, had tail riders. The thing I didn't like about that is that they're really kind of autopilot. They're not really permanent friends of yours. That you just call a random creature and he kind of just takes you to where you want to go on the map. It's cool. It helps you get around a lot easier, but it wasn't something that was implemented the way I thought it'd be. In Monster Hunter Rise, of course, we got our own Palamutes, so we could fully control them. They were fightable, or they were creatures that could fight alongside us. We get a lot of them. We've got like a ton of Palamutes, like a ton of Palicos, but it looks like the Sacred's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a combination between the two. The Sacred's going to kind of move on its own, and it's going to move forward on its own, and you can, steer it left and right, which I think is going to help during combat. You don't got to worry about steering it as you're fighting. And it can also go into auto mode. You can tell it where to go, and you can sit back, relax. You can sharpen your weapons, put on your manos, from what I understand. It's going to be great. So hopefully it's the best of both worlds. Now, that's the first two things. The third one is going to be no time limit. Now, this is going to be one of those things that some of the older vets might not like, but typically, Monster Hunter games give you a 50-minute time limit for most of your hunts. Now, with very few exceptions, most hunts are supposed to be done within a certain amount of time, usually 50 minutes. One exception I can think of is the Sappy Jiva fight. You got 20 minutes to do it. It's meant to be fought multiple times. Usually takes about 2 times to take him out, but when he first came out, it could take 3 or 4 times. But it usually takes about 2 times to take him out before you can actually slay him. He would actually run away as part of the siege. Same thing with Kulve Taroth. You have to do so much damage to them before you could actually slay them. That's part of that event quest. That's part of that special quest. They're getting rid of the time limit. They could go one of two ways with it. Either one, Capcom was just like, most fights are done well before the 50-minute time limit anyway, so there's no real point in having it, or they're going to up the difficulty of monsters. Now, I don't think they're going to really up the difficulty of monsters. I don't think we're going to suddenly have monsters that take all 50 minutes to fight. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think there's going to be probably the same level of difficulty for monsters. So I don't think it's going to take, 1-2 hours to slay a creature. I think they just said, you know what, screw it. There's no real point in having the time limit on there. And they're going with a more open world feel, so that time limit might have interfered with them doing that. So the time limit being gone, I think it's going to be another one of those quality of life fixes that once it's implemented, you're not going to want to go back to it. I think once it's gone, it's probably gone. Again, I'm sure there's going to be people in the audience that just don't like that either. It's going to say, oh, this is my Monster Hunter I grew up with. Personally, I think that a lot of these quality of life changes are perfect for Monster Hunter. And there is a lot of changes that have come about because... or not because, but a lot of changes that have been quality of life that saved a lot of time too. One of the big things about Monster Hunter that took a long time back in the day is having to grind up so much and do a lot of things that just took time away from the hunt to actually get to the hunt. Now a lot of them are gone. Like I said when I started the video, you have to do a lot of grinding before. Now eventually you would find, or you get a farm unlocked of some kind. You could like farm things like honey a little bit easier, like flash bugs a little bit easier. But before, you'd be lucky to go out and do a gathering mission and get 2 or 3 honey a run. Imagine having to do like 4 or 5 gathering missions before you can go out and fight yourself a Rathalos, and you got to farm the Rathalos. Now, of course, the better you got, the easier it'd be to take them out without using items. But you get what I'm saying. And again, back then, once you ran out of items, you basically had to either finish them, start over, or you were just screwed. So that's another good one that I'm looking forward to. Now, the 3D map is going to be a new addition as well. It sounds cool. I've never really had too much of an issue with the maps. Now, in World, it did take quite a bit to get used to the maps. It had a lot of verticality, especially in the starting region, going around those trees. So it does take a little bit to memorize them. I think the 3D rendering of the map is probably going to help a bit, but I personally never had that much of an issue with them. Especially since we're going to have the Sacred Second auto-run for us and take us where we want to go. If it works the way it does in World, we just tell it, hey, we want to go here. It's going to take us and show us how to get through those secret ways. But, it can't hurt to have a 3D map, so you can kind of see what everything looks like. Now, speaking of the open world, now, Capcom has said it's going to be kind of an open world setup for these maps. we already kind of have that with World, so I'm not sure how much open we're going to be unless you can literally get to like each zone from the starting area. So that's what they mean. That'd be pretty cool. But if we've still got actual maps we got to load into and it's just like a big wide open space, it's something we kind of already had. So I'm curious to see how this works with the beta coming out here this Thursday. I'm really curious to see just like how open this is and what they mean by the open world. Maybe they just mean the map is bigger. Maybe it means we can actually get to other zones from the map, but we've already got kind of the open world thing going on now. We have it in Monster Hunter World, we've got it in Monster Hunter Rise, we've got these big old open maps, but we still have to load into other areas. So the open world thing we've kind of already got, so it's not really a new thing. And even then by open world, all it is you don't have to load in between zones. Again, for those of you who started playing when Monster Hunter World came out, before, whenever you would go to different zones, you would have to go through a loading screen to get to those zones. It was a real pain in the butt, especially such getting knocked into another zone by a creature. You know, it's like walking into an area and then getting tail swapped by Rathalos, getting knocked right back into it. So now you got 3 loading screens you got to go through. It was a real pain. Now, it did make healing out of those situations a lot easier. You could just, go to a load zone if a Rathalos was after you or a creature's after you. Go through the loading screen, stop, calm down, sharpen your weapon, relax, drink a potion, whatever, and then go right back into it. But I do like the new system of not having those loading zones. So we'll see how open the open world is. I don't think it's going to be anything different than what we've already got, but I may be wrong about that. They may have talked about it a bit already, but I've heard people talking about the open world, but not really explaining how it works because they're still saying there's multiple maps. I mean, we know about the Wildspire Waste, we know about the oil area, we know about the Scarlet Forest. I mean, those are whole totally different areas. So unless we can literally get to those areas from each area, then it's not really truly an open world. But regardless, I like the layout that we've been doing since World. I would like to go ahead and keep that. Now, another feature that I think is going to be really good that I hope we're going to be keeping from now on is right now when you shoot up an SOS player, you can get people to come and join your crew. They can come up on a hunt. If you've got 2 people, you can both have your Palico with you or have a creature with you. But once you get 3 or more to join, your Palicos and your creatures go away. Now, 2 things about this. One, now your Palicos are going to stay with you even if you have more than 4 people. So you can have up to 8 hunters, I should say. You have 4 hunters and the 4 Palicos. That could be an insane level of damage, an insane amount of support, which is also what makes me wonder if maybe monsters might be a little bit harder this time around too, especially multiplayer, but we'll see. We're going to see if it scales to 8 versus scaling to 4, but that is one thing that they showed in the showcase is that, yeah, when you've got your NPCs, or not your NPCs, when you've got your teammates with you, when you SOS, they will have their Palicos with them too. I think I showed a video about that, but yeah, that's what they've said. We'll see if they will still fight or if they just kind of show up there. If they're just kind of around, but they don't really engage. The other thing is, if you don't want to fight with, actual players, actual humans, you can still SOS and get NPCs to fight with you too. That is huge. Now, there's a lot of times where I really wish I had Hope, someone that could take the aggro off of me for a bit so I had a little bit more breathing room, but nobody would actually join the fight. Having NPCs is going to be huge. And I did get to confirm, I have not confirmed, but I found out the information from other people who have already asked that question too. If the NPCs cart, it does not count against your cart limit. So that means you still get all the carts to yourself. The NPCs getting carted does not affect you at all. So I can't wait to see the first player that does a challenge of can all my NPCs beat the monster for me. I can see that happening. I can see them doing the whole Palico run with just Palicos beat the monsters. And I can easily see them do a run where they just try to have the NPCs beat the monster for you. So this could potentially be the easiest monster in the game, or it could still be the hardest, because like I said, they could scale this up as well. So we'll see how that one works. But it's good to give people who don't want to play with multiple people, or who maybe don't have internet or can't get hunters to hunt with them, have an option for a multiplayer or for help. So it's good to see that. Next up, focus mode. Now, each Monster Hunter has its own little unique thing it does. For Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, we had the Clutch Claw. For Rise, we had the Wire Bugs. And it looks like we're going to be getting a focus modes and a wound system coming in Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, we already kind of wound creatures in Monster Hunter World. The mounting system's a bit different in Rise. It's been a long time since I played it, honestly. So even when I tried to play it recently, I still couldn't do it. But in World, at least, in Iceborne, you can actually wound creatures. You can actually tenderize them, soften them up, so that your weapons don't bounce off of them and really do more damage to them. We're going to get something similar come Wild. It's going to be the wound system. You're going to be able to make wounds on a creature, and then use those wounds to do special damaging attacks. So that's one I can't really wait to use. And we're going to have a new focus mode, too, where we can actually aim our weapons, kind of like you can a bowgun. Now, It's definitely probably going to be clunky. I hope it's not too bad. I always had personally an issue aiming the bow gun. It always felt very weird. In the older games, it was worse. It was way worse. Now in World, it's not as bad as it used to be, but it never felt like FPS or even a third-person shooter. It's always very clunky. Monster Hunter has very specific controls, so trying to work around those along with your bow gun, you basically have to rekey everything. I'm not a bowgun main, so I very rarely use one at all, so that's one of the reasons I don't, is because it's such a pain in the butt to do it. But we're going to be able to aim our weapons and aim at those wounds with all of our melee weapons as well, so I can't wait to do that in a new system. There's a lot of different things you can do with those wounds, and it's really weapon specific, so I really can't wait to see that. And it's probably going to be something to where, just like tenderizing monsters and using the clutch cloud is going to be pretty much a staple of every hunt coming in Wilds. And then finally, we've got the Power Clash system coming too. That's going to be another big one. This is one that, again, completely changes up the hunt. I mean, just like having two weapons, just like having the wound system, just like having the open worlds and having the Palicos with you and the NPCs, everything, just like all of that is going to fundamentally change your hunt with the Power Clash system. Looks like if you time a block perfectly, you have a chance to do a Power Clash with a monster. You can pull out your shield and, you kind of, push back and forth with them. It's kind of cool having more control over being able to stop a monster in his tracks. You can kind of stop them right now if you get them to flinch, or if you get them to, get a part broken off, or you knock them over at the right time. It is nice to be able to, and I know it's probably not going to be every time you do it, but it is nice to have one more way of guaranteeing you're going to stop a monster in its tracks with your weapon. It's always kind of cool. I always wanted a weapon that could guarantee counter a monster, like stop it, like it runs into you and you just like turn it away or smack it or something. I know that'd probably be really overpowered, but I do like we're getting stronger as hunters as the generations go on. I mean, back in the day, our moveset was very limited. I don't even think the greatsword could charge, and now here we are with greatswords that can do combos that are almost, if you're good, almost as fast as like dual blades as far as moving around. I mean, the lance can stay in a creature's face and just stay there and dish out a ton of damage. It couldn't necessarily do that as well back in the day. Charge blade is getting more and more moves. I mean, we're getting more and more ways we can take out monsters, and we can slay them, and we can capture them, and it does feel good that we are getting stronger, but the question always becomes, are we going to be getting too much power creep? Are monsters going to just get to the point to where they have to do too many gimmicks to get around how strong we are, or are they just going to let us be strong and have fun with it? And so far, for the most part, they're just letting us be strong and have fun with it. Now, I do like the idea of the Power Clash system. Not every weapon can do it. I think only weapons that have shields can do it, so this is going to be one more way we can actually, try to stop a creature, and just to me, I thought that was really cool. I'm not really sure how to describe it any other way. It's just, I like ways where you can actually control the monster a bit more. We can get tossed around as hunters all day long, but it's hard for us to kind of toss around monsters that easily. Like, once you're strong enough, you got a strong enough weapon, you can go and do, like, the low-rank monsters, and, like, every hit's going to be flinching them, stuff like that, but I like having a bit more control in Battlefield. Like, I can just sit there, and I know if a monster's running at me, I can counter him, or I'm going to be able to stop him in his tracks, or I'm going to be able to stun him. Stuff like that, I really like. I don't necessarily think it needs to be overpowered or it needs to be like every hit, but I do, again, it's something weird, but it's just something that I happen to really enjoy, having that control, and it makes me feel like our hunters are actually getting stronger. I mean, if you were to take the kits that we got now, and even Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise, take all of our abilities and our weapons and drop us back in like Monster Hunter Freedom Unite days, that we would just annihilate those games. It'd be crazy. I really wish we can get like we probably will get another remake at some point, but well, I doubt we'll ever get a remake where it's got every single creature and every single area in it. I mean, I don't see a remake like Generations Ultimate, but like adding in World and Rise and Wilds. I don't think that's going to be, the realm of possibility outside of an MMO, but I think that would be kind of cool too. I mean, imagine doing a Monster Hunter game, an MMO. You get to like choose your starting area, but we get to do all the areas, make our way through them with all of the power we've got now. I mean, make it an MMO and let us just go at it. That'd be pretty cool. Think about that, Capcom. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. Again, these are the abilities and these are the features being added to the game, whether they be temporary or whether they be permanent. Most of these I think are gonna be permanent, or at least I hope they are. I'll go over them again. The Sacred is probably not gonna be permanent, but some kind of rideable creature. I think that idea is kind of baked into Monster Hunter now. So I think the idea of a rideable creature is permanent, but the Sacred itself may not be. Time limits, I don't see time limits coming back after Wilds if they're taking them out. They're probably going to keep them out. I don't see a situation where they put the time limits back in. Open World, ever since World, they pretty much open up all the maps. I don't see us going back to loading screens between each sections again. That's just horrible. I'm glad they're gone. NPC hunters, if you don't have any human hunters to come with you. Again, a feature that I hope is going to be permanent. Now, the focus system is probably going to be a temporary one. I think that's just like the additional hunting mechanic that just comes along with each generation. Having 2 weapons, I think that's going to be a permanent addition. 3D maps, I think this is going to be the new standard now. Palico staying with you during multiplayer. If you've got a full team, I think that might be a permanent one now. One thing I didn't talk about was picking up bombs, but it's just a smaller one. It's, again, one of those small quality of life ones. I got quite a few more I just didn't get to, but that was just written on here. Being able to pick up bombs. If you misplace it and then throw the bombs too, I think it's a good quality of life one. And then the Power Clash one, I think might be a temporary one. I don't know if it's one we're going to be able to keep, but I think that one might be, I hope it's one that's kept, but it may be, that might be one of the other ones that's just for this generation, for this, for Wilds. But yeah, that is all I want to talk about today. Those are some of the features I'm looking forward to and that I think are really going to redefine how we do the hunts. I'm going to be testing all this stuff out as much as I can during the beta this week. It's going to be a long beta. It's going to be all weekend. I'm going to try to test out every weapon, get gameplay with everything. I want to go in there and just go ham, but I've got to try to get some stuff for the channel, so I'm going to get my hunts over, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to test out the weapons. I'm going to explore the map as much as I can. Everybody's going to be doing that too, but I'm going to be keeping my eye out for stuff that's specific that people may not be thinking about, and I'm going to be looking at these specific things to see if I can test them out a bit as well. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you for coming by. Please, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, leave a like on the video. If you love what we're doing, please sub to the channel, and I will see you all on the next video.